everyone, what is up? Pop Daddy here, and I'm here with another retrospective video. And if you click the thumbnail, you already know what it is. Now, when I was finishing up the 40th anniversary of the Ghostbusters retrospective for its 40th anniversary, I noticed it was also the 40th anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, for me, Ninja Turtles started in '87 and '88 with the action figures and TV series. I wasn't too familiar with the comic, and I started doing a deep dig of Ninja Turtle stuff, and so I'm bringing to you a little retrospective also. I'll be doing a ranking of the Turtles, video games, the movies. I'm also gonna have a food review in here somewhere that you guys all like to see, and this one's gonna be a three-parter. Because the thing is with Ghostbusters most popular years, I'll be generous. I'll say 84 when the first movie came out to 91. Now the TV series and merchandise didn't really go into high gear until 1986. So from like 84 to 91 is being generous, because the real like prime of Ghostbusters was most likely 86 to 90. And with Ghostbusters, after the sequel and the cartoon failed, Extreme Ghostbusters failed to take off, there was a little bit of renewal with the video game. Then there were, action figures and stuff in the early 2010s. Then the reboot in 2016 and the sequels in the early 2020s. But it was never as big as it was in the mid-'80s, or late 80s, as big as it was in the late 80s. Ninja Turtles, on the other hand, the closest it had to a dead time was from 97 to 2003. And I'll get to that later. But aside from that, whenever Turtle stuff came out, it was always immensely huge. So right now, I'm going to start like I did with Ghostbusters, with a little bit of history. In 1983, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird met in Massachusetts and began illustrating together, moving in shortly after to Dover, New Hampshire. One night in November of '83, Eastman drew a picture of a turtle armed with nunchucks, to which Laird called him a teenage mutant. A concept was born. The concept of four turtles who were teenagers and stood upright came from comic books which they loved at the time. Teenage from Teen Titans, mutants from X-Men, ninjas from Daredevil, and turtles as being in the tradition of funny anthropomorphic animals such as Howard the Duck. Speaking of Daredevil, a fun fan theory is that the accident that caused Matt Murdock to go blind, the chemical that got splashed in his eyes, was the ooze that turned the turtles into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, there's nothing to back this up, but I think it's a fun fan theory, seeing that those two stories had heroes rise up in the same day from the same accident. Even though they were ninjas, Eastman and Laird decided to give them names based off of Italian Renaissance painters as opposed to traditional Japanese names, and give them weapons as well. Leonardo, katana; Donatello, bow staff; Raphael, scythe; and Michelangelo, nunchucks. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were born. In early 1984, the guys founded Mirage Comics and finished up their first comic book, also adding additional characters such as adopted father / sensei Splinter, human friend / lab assistant April O'Neil, and the leader of the Evil Foot Clan, Shredder. The following year, masked vigilante Casey Jones would also be introduced. With an advertisement in Comic Buyer's Guide, this attracted the interest of comic distributors, and with a few weeks, 3,000 prints of the first issue were sold. Further issues were released in the following years, and sales continued to climb, and nothing could prepare them for what was next. Playmates Toys, who at this point were best known for a talking doll known as Cricket, approached the boys in 1987 with an intent to take the Turtles and make a toy line out of them. And make it they did. An army of heroes, a rogues gallery of villains, and a village of playsets, and a fleet of vehicles. This toy line was huge, but Playmates did not stop there. Inspired by He-Man, G.I. Joe, and Transformers, Playmates teamed up with animation studio Murakami Wolf Swenson to bring the Turtles to the small screen. In late 1987, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles premiered in syndication, where it would run for almost a decade. In 1990, it would also jump to Saturday mornings on CBS. Aside from their love of pizza and catchphrases, which would stick to the Turtles to this day, two other things would added that would stick. Different colors, which were introduced in the toy line, and personalities. Leonardo, blue, leader. Donatello, purple, brains. Raphael, red, hothead. Michelangelo, orange, jokester. They also gave the Turtles a friendlier image and softer look to appease both parents and networks. They also toned down the violence, took away the cursing, and made the bad guys look not as scary. And in some areas replaced the word ninja with hero. Although some comic readers weren't fans of this, they weren't the intended audience. In 1989, Turtles expanded to another form of entertainment, video games, with Konami at the helm, known for games such as Contra and Frogger, tried to make it somewhat more of an open-world side-scroller, such as a chapter of their Castlevania series. This was the model they used for the home version. For the arcade, they made it a good old-fashioned beat-em-up, where you and 3 friends could play as the heroes and take on Shredder and his goons. By the end of 1989, the Turtles had gone from a small indie comic to having a toy line that was equal, if not better, than G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, Ghostbusters, and Transformers, a hit TV show, and popular video games. There was only one place left for them to go. In 1989, filming began on the movie, with a budget of $13.5 million. Golden Harvest, who was best known for making and distributing Bruce Lee films, took care of the production. The script for the movie was more based off the comic than the TV show, giving it a slightly darker tone. The turtle suits were made by Jim Henson Creature Shop. Henson later stated that these were some of the most advanced models he ever worked on. After filming, the movie was shopped around to companies such as Disney, Universal, MGM, Orion, Fox, and Paramount, who currently holds the rights to the Turtles, but they all turned down the film, fearing it would be another Masters of the Universe situation. Enter New Line Cinema. They decided to distribute the film. For at this point, they were mostly known for Nightmare on Elm Street and B-movies. Released in March of 1990, the film went on to make $200 million, becoming the 4th highest grossing movie of 1990 and the highest grossing independent film ever, at that time earning positive reviews. A sequel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze, was rushed into production and released less than a year later. This one felt like the cartoon, had less fighting, and reviews were lukewarm. Also in 1991, Konami had 2 releases that are at the top of many fans' lists. The first was an NES edition of the arcade game, and the second was a sequel called Turtles in Time for the arcade. It would later be ported to the Super Nintendo. Konami would release several more games throughout the 1990s. There was also a stage show at this time that toured as a concert. The Turtles were riding high. In 1993, a third Ninja Turtles movie was released, with the boys traveling back in time. Unfortunately, this one was neither a hit with the fans nor the critics. In November 1996, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, after 10 seasons and 193 episodes, was canceled. Around this time, the toy line fizzled out as well, after 10 years becoming the 3rd highest selling toy line in history, behind G.I. Joe and Star Wars. In 1997, the Turtles returned for a live-action series, Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. These had the brothers back with a sister, 5th Turtle Venus de Milo, and a toy line to go along with it. Unfortunately, the series only lasted 1 season, and the toy line failed to find its footing. Peter Laird would later say it was the only Turtles project he truly regretted. By the end of the 90s, the Turtles had come and gone. In June of 2000, Kevin Eastman, who 16 and a half years earlier drew the first sketch of a turtle holding nunchucks, sold his share of Ninja Turtles to Laird and Mirage, saying he was moving on to other projects. In 2003, 4Kids Entertainment launched a new animated series. While the Turtles kept their previous personalities, this show was more story-based and darker in tone. Along with an accompanying toy line, it was a hit with both critics and fans, lasting 7 seasons and 156 episodes. March of 2007, 14 years after their last big screen appearance and 17 after their first, the Turtles were back. The movie, simply titled TMNT, brought the boys back, and it was a sequel of sorts, referencing the previous 3. The movie was a moderate hit. Although it wasn't too big a hit with many critics, fans loved it. It came in #1 opening weekend. Unfortunately, a teased sequel never happened. In 2009, before TMNT made its final bow, the 2003 Turtles teamed up with the 1987 Turtles for Turtles Forever. Although some fans liked it, it wasn't really a reunion worth remembering. In October 2009, Peter Laird announced that he sold the franchise to Viacom. In 2012, Nickelodeon released a new animated series. Although there were doubts based off the early images, The show became a huge hit with kids, parents, and critics alike, with its good humor, great storytelling, and a rogues gallery of villains, lasting 5 seasons and 126 episodes. Along with the show, there were toys also, and the toy line was a hit as well, something the Turtles hadn't seen since the early 90s. In 2014, a new live-action movie was released from producer Michael Bay. Unfortunately, this one was plagued with negativity from the start. Due to his involvement, the CGI, the looks of the Turtles, the movie was #1 opening weekend, but dropped to #2 the following weekend, getting beat by Guardians of the Galaxy in its third weekend. It still did well enough to get a sequel in 2016. In 2018, a fourth animated series made its debut, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, lasting 2 seasons and 76 episodes. Although the shortest lasting series, kids still loved it, and it got a made-for-Netflix movie. In April 2020, IDW Comics, which had been printing the Turtles comics since 2011, had a new story from Kevin Eastman. It was a return to the grittier, violent Turtle stories of the past. With 3 of the 4 Turtles killed in action, the last one has taken up the mantle of the last Ronin. Who was it? I'll leave that mystery up to you. In 2022, Tribute Games released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, a callback to the Turtles beat-em-up games of the late 80s and early 90s. Not only could you play as the 4 brothers, for the first time you could also play as April and Splinter as well. A DLC was later released with Usagi Yojimbo and Shredder's daughter Karai. Plus, if you beat the game, you got to play as Casey Jones. With challenge levels, different skins for each character, this game had major replayability value. Most recently, in August of 2023, the latest Turtles movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, was released to both positive reviews from both fans and critics, with a follow-up animated series to debut in summer of 2024. I will be ranking my favorite Turtle projects, so I thank you for watching. And I just wanted to go over something real fast. Was the one thing about the Turtles was that there wasn't really a dead time, if that makes sense. As I mentioned with Ghostbusters, their dead time was, say, from fall of 1991, if I'm being generous, to a brief reemergence in 1997 when Extreme Ghostbusters came out, to another period from then to 2009 when the video game came out. But it got warm, but it was never really on fire as it was in the 80s. Another one would be Star Wars. I'll be generous on that one too and say the original trilogy fever died down around 1985 and then started to reemerge in 1995 when the action figures came out. If I were generous, I would say 1991 when the books came out, but it didn't really catch on as big as it did in 95. It started to churn a little bit more. 1997 is when the special editions were released. Then 1999 is when the Phantom Menace came out. 2002, Attack of the Clones. 2005, Revenge of the Sith. Then 2008, you had the Clone Wars movie and the Clone Wars series. Then that lasted till 2013. Then 2014, Rebels started up. In 2015, the sequels began. There's been series ever since. So there hasn't really been a dead time for Star Wars. So maybe I'll do a retrospective on that soon. Probably not, but it's fun to think about. The closest thing the Turtles had to a dead time was from 1997 to 2003, when the Next Mutation ended, which really didn't catch on. The TMNT 2003 series started up. That was a hit. That's what latched back on. But in the late 90s, when Hot Topic started and all that, you know, you had the t-shirts, you had wallets, you had tumblers, you had mugs. The merchandise there was for what people who grew up with the Turtles, it was for them. So although that merchandise didn't really catch on for kids, it caught on for adults. Although kids lost track, adults never really did, if that makes sense. And I was a huge fan, like with Ghostbusters. In fact, Ninja Turtles was the thing that got me off Ghostbusters. That was the fandom that me and my brother jumped to. I mean, we loved both at the same time. We loved both Ghostbusters and Turtles. Those combo figures from like 6-7 years ago, those would have blown my 6-year-old mind. I know I said it in the last episode that one of the best birthday presents I ever received was the real Ghostbusters Firehouse. Well, one of the best Christmas presents I ever received was the Technodrome. Now, unfortunately, I never had the Soar playset. I got the Technodrome instead, and that seemed pretty fun to me. But, you know, we had the bed sheets, we had sleeping bags, we had all kinds of Turtles merch, and we were also Turtles for Halloween. My brother was Leonardo, and I was Raphael. We were all in on Ninja Turtles. That brings us to now. I'm just going to be doing a quick review of a few turtle items. Keep in mind, these are my opinions, so feel free to agree or disagree. First, I'll be ranking the turtles themselves. Now, here's the thing. I'm just reviewing the main four. Not doing any Venus, no Slash, no Metalhead, just the four turtles. Number four, this one is, sometimes he's at the bottom, sometimes he's in the middle. For me, he was never the top, and that is Leonardo. Leonardo is the generic turtle. He's usually one that people think about when they think of Ninja Turtles. When they think of Ninja Turtle, they think of turtle with swords, which is usually Leonardo. His plot lines seem like he could have been switched out with another turtle at any time. He's a good leader. That's pretty much it. And his plot lines could have been, you need to be a better fighter. That could have been a Donatello plot line. You need to be better out in the field. That could have been a Raphael plot line. You need to learn control. That could have been a Michelangelo plot line. And although Leo is the most boring, he still is essential. And a lot of good stories come from him. And he's number four because someone has to be. And that would be Leonardo. Number three, if there's been a turtle that has remained consistent throughout every single interpretation of the turtles in any type of media, visual media like TV or movies, it's been Michelangelo. I was never big into the whole surfer dude culture, and that was big in the late 80s, the whole oh dude culture, and that's Mikey to a T. That's where he found his footing. That's why people loved him. He's the party dude. He's the one that everyone loves. And while he's a great turtle, I never really fully grasped him. And I think throughout my life, Mikey's always been the number three turtle for me. And, that may stink for some of the Mikey fans, but I've learned to accept it because a lot of people like Mikey, but he's just not for me. So for number two, if I had made this list, say about 16 years ago, maybe 17 years ago, this turtle would have been number one. Now, when I got my Nintendo in 1989, I got a copy of the video game. And I, at that point, didn't have a favorite Ninja Turtle. And this turtle I played as, and the one thing that made him my favorite Ninja Turtle was that he could use his weapon through walls. Number two is Donatello. Donatello is a good character. He's the brains of the operation. He makes things. He makes the gadgets and stuff like that. He's always the smart one. And he's another one where, like his personality has not changed since their very first TV show. Number one, by process of elimination, it's Raphael. And a funny story is that Raphael used to be my least favorite Ninja Turtle. And reason being is that same reason Dying was my favorite. In the video game, he had the weakest weapon. So I would always play him first. So when he got captured in the Hudson River by the seaweed, I could just play as the other turtles, and it would be okay. Which was weird also because I love Rob Paulson's voice, but the fact that I did not like him in the video game, set him on that for me. The thing with him in the TV shows and such, he can carry himself well as a character. He's well written. Usually the best episodes have to do with him and Leonardo together, or just him. The movies got this right as well, because usually the other turtles stick together, and he's usually the one that wanders off. Whether it's he gets kidnapped, whether the other turtles get kidnapped and someone needs to stay behind to rescue them, Raphael is always the one they go with. He's the most complex turtle. He's the best written turtle. I think that in all the turtle live action and animated turtle stuff, he is the one that the writers know that they can do anything with and do try to do anything with. And I've come to appreciate that in these later years. Okay, animated series. I'm skipping this one because I have not seen all of them. And I'm currently working my way through 2003. And if I had to rank it right now, I might go 87 number 2, 2003 number 1, because 2003 is well written. The only thing I don't care for about it is that the turtles don't have pupils and they just look weird. But in one of the flashback episodes, they do have pupils, so it totally throws everything off. But yeah, so You know what? Scrap it. Throw this out. End it. We'll get to the next one. Video games. This will be quick. There have been a lot of Ninja Turtles video games over the years. I'm just ranking my top 5. Cowabunga! Number 5 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist for the Sega Genesis. This one sort of is kind of like the home version of Turtles in Time, where a few of the levels seem the same. And the thing is, though, while it's bright and colorful, it's also a lot shorter than most other Turtle games, but I love the mechanics of it, and it is fun to play, especially with others. And you can like change the turtle colors, which was something interesting at the time. But I mean, it's still a good game. Now, keep in mind, out of all the games, these are the top 5, so there's not really a reason for me to like have there, except for there were ones that I found better. Cowabunga! Number 4 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Manhattan Project for the Nintendo. This one took the mechanics of the arcade game that was released for Nintendo, and it just built upon that. Like, you have new moves, there's better animation, and the like foot soldiers come in like a different variety of ways to annoy and attack you, and that's something that like is always a fun time. And if you can find a copy of this, definitely get it, because it's always fun. And there's also dual playing, so that's always a plus. Cowabunga! Number 3 goes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, the arcade version, which oddly enough is part 2, based off of the arcade game's part 1, but for the home consoles, it was part 4 as a follow-up to 1, 2, and 3 for the Nintendo, which is, it's weird, it's complicated, I'm not getting into it, but this one is a good time. It's like the arcade game, but I found it to be a bit more difficult, and although fun, the difficulty didn't made it sour on me, if that makes sense. So Turtles in Time is number 3. Cowabunga! Number 2, you know it, you loved it, you've most likely dumped a summer's worth of quarters into it. It is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game for the arcade, not the arcade game for the NES. I consider those two different games, even though they're the same story. I remember my brother coming home all excited about seeing this in person, and he was like, "Yo, you're never gonna believe this. There's a Turtles arcade game, and the side has the Turtles and Shredder, and April's there, and April looks weird because she's live action. It's so totally weird." And my mind was blown, because keep in mind, this was before the movie came out, so this was our first time seeing April in live action. So I was like, "Whoa, I gotta see this." And I remember a week or two later, we were at the roller skating rink, and I saw the arcade game in all its glory, seeing the 4 plush-looking Turtles there in live action, Shredder in the street, April like this on the side of the building. It stuck with me, and I will always remember that game, and I loved it. And, although I never had the home version, probably because my parents heard me complaining about the first game, I would always rent that alongside DuckTales whenever I would rent video games. Cowabunga! And number 1, if you took all these past 4 games and put them in a blender and it came out today, but it came out better, it would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge. I love, love, love this video game. Now, this video game, you can, like I said, you can play as the Turtles, and you can play as the other characters. And there's different ways to play, too. You have to find out which character plays to which skills. Like, you see, April is weak, but she hits fast, so it might take 5 hits to take a foot soldier down, but where it would take Michelangelo 2, but April doesn't in half the time. Whereas Splinter, he hits like a truck, but he's slow. So that's one thing, you have to find out which character works best for you. Also, there are skins. There are skins based off the animated series, skins based off the movies, skins based off the Game Boy game and NES games, and my personal favorite, skins based off the action figures. And like Casey Jones has giant greenish blue weapons, and Leonardo has his swords are tan. And I love that, and with the challenges and stuff like that, this game has great replayability. There was a while where, during my downtime, I would just play this game. And if you haven't played it, I would highly suggest it. I believe it's on the Xbox Game Pass right now, so that'd be free to play, so definitely check it out. And that leaves us to movies. So there are 7 theatrical released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films that I will be ranking. And keep in mind, this is for theatrical releases only. So sorry, Turtles Forever and Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This ain't your ball game. Let's get started. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Number 7, you might have some controversy here, but others might seem to say, yeah, I can see that. Number 7 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. This movie, I did not care for this when it came out. I did not see it in the theater. And I was looking back, and for some reason my mind always thought it came out in 94, 95. At that point, I was past Ninja Turtles. I was above the age where I found them interesting. I had outgrown them. That I'm looking at was released in 1993, and I can remember me and my brother had 2 of the figures from it, and we were excited to have the figures. And I remember us getting the movie and putting it on, and I just lost interest like almost right away. Maybe it was the setting, maybe they weren't taking on Krang or other super mutants, but I did not care for this movie at all as a kid. And the Turtles were out of their element. The costumes weren't that good looking. The only saving grace was Casey Jones, I will say that. But this movie was like a piece of roller skate pizza that had been sitting out all day. It was bland and boring. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Number 6 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2014. This one I saw for the first time. I assumed it would be the bottom of my list, but I didn't hate this movie. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, there was negative feedback. First, Michael Bay was producing, then Megan Fox was attached, then there were going to be aliens, then the first looks came out, then the CGI was overused, and it was a rough ride to get there, and it's an okay Turtles movie. My major gripes are April being the Turtles' mom, and Mikey being a bit creepy to her. I think that if the Turtles looked closer to the animated series Turtles, or even the Turtles in the first movie, that would knock this up to number 5. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Speaking of the first movie, this might be a controversial opinion, but number 5 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. I loved this movie as a kid. I loved it even more than the first one. I don't know what that says about me. We didn't own this one, but whenever it was on TV, we would watch it. But looking back now, you can definitely tell it's lighter in tone, and seeing the Turtles in the light all the time isn't really that good for the Turtles. April was replaced. Casey Jones was replaced by the Teen Dream-esque Kino, who also knows ninjutsu. And I actually also thought that Professor Perry was Baxter Stockman in the previews. But Shredder's back. He becomes Super Shredder after the ooze touches his spikes. Tokka and Razar are pretty fun. There's the Vanilla Ice scene, which I hated as a kid. Still don't care for it now. Also, Tokka and Razar were supposed to be Bebop and Rocksteady. And if that had happened, it might have been better. But I'm going to be honest. If the Jim Henson Creature Shop had not been involved in this movie probably would have been number 6. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Number 4. Number 4 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. This one was a really fun time. And this added something that the first one was missing, which was fun. You had the Turtles, you had Casey Jones, Vern was back, April was back. Baxter Stockman, we see him in the flesh for the first time, played by Tyler Perry, who does a great job. And although this was lighter in tone, it still had some dark elements which made it good. And also for the first time in the movies, we see Bebop and Rocksteady, and they are great. Seamus plays Rocksteady, and he is fun. This was a fun time. If you've been on the fence about this, if you haven't seen it yet, if you're a Turtles fan, do yourself a favor and check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Number 3, if I had made this movie about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, this would have easily been number 1. After doing some rewatches and thinking about it more, it is now number 3. And that would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2007. I loved this movie when it first came out. Like I said, I had seen it twice. The story was good. It was darker. And the Turtles seemed to be more like brothers. And I really enjoyed this movie. And a fun story, I remember coming home from work and my buddy picking me up and us seeing this at the theater together. And then later that night, my girlfriend at the time wanted to see a movie. And so we saw it again. She picked this because she just come from a bachelorette party. And so I saw it twice in one day. And another fun fact, the movie Shooter came out around the same time. I was an extra in that. and I want to say it came out maybe the same weekend. I did not see Shooter, but I saw TMNT twice on opening day. But if you have kids that are getting older and you want to transition them to an older style of Turtles, I would definitely say this would be the perfect first step, along with the 2003 series, because it's got everything. It's got monsters. Shredder's not there, but the movie holds well without him. Plus, April, Casey, and Splinter all join in on the fun. So definitely give it a watch if you haven't yet. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Number two, sometimes the hardest decision with lists like this is choosing number two because you know it and you love it, but you know there's something better than it. And when it comes down to it, number two is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990. They say nostalgia is a strong drug, but I was able to break free of it and really think about it for this one. I remember the lead up to this movie being insane. It was the first movie that I can really remember looking forward to. I remember seeing the teaser poster with them looking out of the sewer. I can remember the commercials, the previews, not knowing how they fully looked, not knowing how they sounded, seeing the teaser pictures of April wearing yellow. I was all in on this movie, and I can remember it being the movie highlight of me as a little kid. Seeing it was amazing. Hearing Shredder's voice and seeing him, seeing Splinter's backstory, being afraid of Casey Jones the first time we see him, then realizing how awesome he is. Like with Ghostbusters 2, we taped this off TV and we played it a lot. We might have worn this tape out also, but we loved it. For me, this was the pinnacle of the movie-going experience as a kid. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! And for number one, this may come as a surprise for you, but that would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. This movie was amazing. This was awesome. This was funny. I laughed out loud quite a few times. The Turtles get along great. They get along great with April. There are mutants. There are a lot of mutants. It's funny, but it's dark also. Superfly can be scary, but it is a fun time. And you're laughing and getting scared at the same time. It's awesome. It's like a little horror movie for kids. Bebop and Rocksteady are there, and they're always good. Jackie Chan plays Splinter, and he's great. This felt like classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Although there was no Shredder there, I was okay with that. There was none of him in the 2007 movie either, and it still got along okay without him. The Turtles acted like and looked like teenagers. They looked young. Speaking of which, my only gripe with the movie was that Donatello sounded like an 8-year-old. Aside from that, this movie is turtle perfection. If you are a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan who has not seen this yet, definitely check it out. The animation might be a turnoff, but it is definitely well worth it. Those were my rankings. Did you like what I said? Did you not like what I said? Tell me below. Tell me what your rankings of any of those things are below. Animated series, figures, turtles, video games, movies, whatever you think. Now, as we went over, back in the late 80s, early 90s, Turtles merchandise was everywhere. You had the figures and vehicles. You had the video games. You had the clothing. You had the bed sets. You had everything. Now, wasn't limited to clothing and toys and housewares. It also bled into food items. There were snacks and lots of snacks. From pizza wheels to the Crispix / Lucky Charms combined cereal, to the juice boxes, to the fan favorite ice cream bar with the gumball eyes. Turtle stuff was huge. Whenever Turtles fans talk to each other, they have a common connection where they know everything and they know that every other Turtle fan knows everything. Like it would be like, hey, do you remember Ace Duck? Oh yeah, I loved Ace Duck. How about Muckman? Oh, I had Muckman with the sword cover foot and Joe Eyeball. Yeah, he was great. Hey, remember the video game when you had to like go in the Hudson River and defuse the bombs? Yeah, I hated that one. Remember the figure tattoo? I love tattoo. I had temporary tattoos. He was great. He was. There's a common knowledge that everyone knows everything. But there's one item that when Turtles fans are talking to each other, they act like they're the only ones that know about it. And it's a food item. So instead of saying remember, or just remember, they'll say, hey, you wouldn't happen to, or hey, this might sound like a weird question, but, and that item is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Pudding Pie by Hostess. These were released in 1991 to coincide with the release of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. Now, the reason that so many people act like it's a weird fever dream is that they weren't out for that long. It also came with a free sticker. Now, Hostess fruit pies had a glazed, hardened crust and came in flavors like cherry, apple, blueberry. They made one that had a pudding filling instead of a fruit filling. And the outside was green. Now, the reason that so many people think of these as a fever dream that they don't really remember is because they weren't out for that long. And in some areas, they weren't out at all. I did some research for this, and it turns out that no one really knows how long they were out for. In some places, it was 2 weeks. In some places, it was 3 months. In other places, it was 6 weeks. So I'm not just going to go out online and say maybe 4 weeks. I had approximately one of these, and it wasn't even a full one. I had a few bites, and I was done. I am not a fan of non-refrigerated, cream-filled treats, pretty much. This was like a Boston cream donut or an eclair, and it was just, ugh. I like maybe had 2 bites. I remember the sticker that came with it was from Turtles 2. I want to say they were on the roof of the TCRI building. Now for the Ecto Cooler review in history, I was able to buy that bottle of orange tangerine juicy juice, and that was the closest thing we had that tasted like Ecto Cooler. For the pudding pies, the closest thing there was a Drake's or Hostess pudding pie, but they don't make those anymore. So the closest thing now would be a Tasty Flake eclair pie, but it wouldn't be close enough. So I decided not to do it. I thought about getting a Drake's fruit cake and scraping out the fruit and filling it with pudding, but that was just way too much work. Maybe in a future video, I'll hack one together and show you guys how it is. But for now, there's nothing for me to compare it to. Compare it to what, you may ask? Nutty and Nostalgic is back once again, and this time they have Cowabunga pies. This one is based off of the Turtles pie flavor. And it's got vanilla pudding power with, looks like it got little chunks at the top. I'll show you what it is. Because the crust of the Turtles pie was green. I, as a kid, thought it was just a frosting. Turns out that the dough was colored green. I didn't know that. Because keep in mind, I only had contact with one for about maybe 10 seconds. So let's give it a shot. As always, whoa, crust right on top. Oh, this thing mixes in easy. Got a nice little spoonful there. Now the first taste. It's good. Based off what I remember of the Turtles pies, 9 times out of 10, I would choose that jar over the pies. That tastes nothing like an eclair or a Boston cream pie or a pudding pie, but that is good. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, I would go for that as opposed to the pie. The only reason I would go for the pie would be for nostalgic reasons. So I would say check out Nutty Nostalgic if you want to try a tasty treat. Even if you didn't like the Turtles pies, you will like that. Hey everyone, Pop Daddy here from the editing room. One thing I forgot to add to that review was that the jar itself tasted like vanilla frosting with the consistency of natural peanut butter. It was really good. I had tried that once before. It was in a jar that had been opened a few times, and I was offered a taste for it. I actually did a review of it also. I'll have to see if the video is here. I'll re-upload it or unlock it, whatever I did. I probably wasn't too happy with it. And I remember that one tasting like sugar cookie dough. This one is frosting. I enjoyed it. Be sure to check it out if it sounds good to you. And also I had refrigerated it to see how it would be refrigerated, and it was about the same consistency. So I forgot to add that in the video, but now you know. Peace. Well, that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm glad I got to dive deep in Turtles' backstory. Thank you all for watching. Comment below, tell me what you think. Tell me if you want me doing more retrospectives. I loved doing this one. I love doing the history for this one. And, you know, I will be back with a new video soon. If you have any suggestions or requests, therealpopdaddy@gmail.com. And I finally made it to 400. Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate you all, and I will see you soon. Peace.